or Juanita, whatever you want to call her, is basically Susan's assistant. And Susan's primary function is as my and Sandy's assistant. And then with Janet as Susan's assistant. Then Steve and Jamie, I really didn't know how to separate those guys. So why try to? They're in charge of the building, the maintenance of the building, the setup of the building, everything. When you think of the building, it has become their area of responsibility. And I need to say now, it is incredible how this building looks now. And I think it's just because I think that's a part of how what we do here with our hands and with our abilities, what we do affects what happens spiritually here. And I think that's a great example. Donna Camp is a children's ministry manager. Really, she oversees hands-on. She's the director of the nursery and the junior kids church, which is 0 to 5. And she oversees the entire children's ministry, which incorporates the kids church, which is 0 to 10. Jody Collins is in charge of special events and the van dispatch ministry. Barry Dick is over technical ministry, which is audio, video, and lighting, and all of it. And he oversees all of those areas basically. Amy Funka's in charge of the Provider Project, which is it's an area that we really need to get on the same page here in the ministry to be able to functionally serve people who come in, so that we don't have a sign on the sound cage of somebody trying to sell a 1974 Chevy Nova. That person does, it's not just for people that say, hey, I need my electric bill paid. It's for people that can say, I've got a car for sale, and if anybody needs a car, can you let them know? Then that goes into the Provider Project program, and then when somebody calls, and then people can say, man, is there anybody trying to sell a car? It's in a $500 range in the Provider Project, that we'll have that in that. And I mean, so we need to broaden that area and all get on the same page in that area. Drew Funka is in charge of the phone ministry, and he assists in sound and facilitates that area. Gerald and Sherry Garrison are in charge of just service time help. Really helps ministry would have been too general, but what they're in charge of, what those areas that ushering, communion, baptisms, and greeters, they're in charge and oversee the helps ministry for the services, for the guts meetings. Steve Hunter is over Monday night prayer. John Corzilius is in charge of the music, the band, finding new music, making sure that there's fresh players in the band, and kind of pastoring that group a little bit. Kevin Tyler is in charge of the van ministry. Ivan Bevermeyer is in charge of building maintenance, meeting setup, and security. And that building maintenance is cleanup after and before services, and the scheduling of that. Rick Tinkle is the kids church guy, and is basically in charge. That's 5 to 10 in there. It's actually 6 to 10. The ages that are in there. Daryl Figler is this is a key position in that Daryl. What we do with Daryl is there's a lot of people who call the ministry that just need somebody, just need a stroke, or just need some encouragement, or just need to know somebody's there to pray for them, or just just need a little pastoral touch. Daryl almost on a daily basis calls into the office to check on those type of needs, and what I'd like to do with that program is to expand that to where if people want to get plugged in with that kind of thing, that Daryl can coordinate that through the office. And then, of course, the illustrious health fighters, Kim and Jana Ratliff. So that's just a basic overview of the task force. What I'd like to do is I'd like to let you guys have, you can just pass these around, you can just do it seated. What this is right here is a flow chart of the ministry, and basically where every one of these areas falls under. So much for the kickoff. Okay, let's turn to our task force notes. Put your flow chart away. Read your name on there, feel how important you are, and then put it away. Put it away, Gerald. You found your name. Thanks. Okay. Purpose. Here is a very broad, yet I think a great explanation of what guts is. Guts is not Bill and Sandy Shear anymore. And I think in order for us to do what God's called us to do as a church and as a ministry, we have to know what the purpose is. Guts is to reach out to people with an attitude of coming to Jesus as they are. And the three things that God put in my heart, and this is simply, when people ask you what Guts is about, you can answer it this way right here. To evangelize, to discipline, and to develop. Excuse me. To evangelize, to disciple, and to develop. Okay? And that's real easy. And you know what? People will say, well, that's pretty broad swath you've cut there. And it really isn't. It's really exactly, it hits the nail on the head what Guts is about. And you'll say, well, isn't that what every church is about? I'd say, well, probably in theory. But what I want to do is I don't want to just have a purpose to hand out to people. I want to have a purpose that we are actually about. Okay? Guts is to reach out to people with an attitude of coming to Jesus as they are, to evangelize, compelling the lost to redemption in Jesus Christ, to disciple, that they grow in the things of Jesus, to develop the character of Christ in every area of life, where people who are businessmen come in here and they get that character that God has for them, and it's developed in every area of their life, in marriages, in raising kids, in being good neighbors, and especially as being a disciple. And then to encourage God's call on lives to extend the gospel to every area, expanding and multiplying the outreach church to America. And you know, the best way for me to describe just what kind of church this is an outreach church. An outreach church that we are extending ourselves into areas of lost sheep, and which is the outreach part, and then the church part where we have a home where we can bring them into the fold and we can disciple and develop their lives, and to be there to shepherd people, and you know, the Bible talks about people wandering as sheep without shepherds. And that's what we want to alleviate. We don't want to be, for people to be able to make that accusation that this area that we live has a bunch of sheep without shepherds. We want to be able to be about the purpose of shepherding those people. Okay? So please put this in your folder and get to know that. I mean, it's very simple. to evangelize, disciple, and develop. Okay, now to your task force notes. The purpose. We found out what the purpose of Guts is in that page there. Now, what's your purpose? If you could define it, what's the purpose of your task? Of what you're doing? You know, if you're here to set up the chairs in the meeting, and we've got 25 or 30 people to accommodate like we had to this morning, you don't have to put any thought in it. There doesn't really have to be a purpose. We just have to set up chairs in an orderly fashion where people can be comfortable and can pay attention. But then if you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people on Sunday night that we have to accommodate, and we have to make sure that they have a place to sit comfortably to receive God's word, then you know what? Your purpose gets a little bit more intense. It doesn't get more important, but the intensity comes up. So what's the purpose of your task? If you're just setting up chairs, you don't have a purpose. It isn't going to work. And it's going to be frustrating to a number of other people. But if you know the purpose of your task and how it affects everybody else in the ministry here and everybody else who's involved in just sitting and watching, then you know something? Then you know the purpose of your task. What is your plan for attaining it? And the real question here to attaining the purpose, because in no area do I see right now in this ministry where we're really attaining the purpose of our task. We all have miles to grow, yet we're so much farther than we ever dreamed we'd be. But what is your plan for attaining it, and what will you give for its realization? That's the real question. What will you give for the realization of your purpose? And see, you've got to answer that question. You've got to decide if this is just the traditional church commitment that you're making, that you'll be here on Sunday nights, that you'll participate, as long as it doesn't get in the way of other activities that you're involved in. As long as it doesn't get in the way of other interests that you have. I mean, you've got to make that decision. And you've got to be able to communicate that decision. The purpose of this ministry, I believe God's requiring this city of us, and I believe God's requiring of us to multiply this around the country. Now, outside of that, I mean, I'm open to Guts in Europe or Guts in Central America, but you know, I really can't look past right now what God's put in my heart to multiply this around the country. See, so what we have to have is we have to have our purpose lined out specifically. Not just generally, not just Bill, not just Sandy, not just a few people that we think carry the load. We have to have everybody rank and file that understand their purpose. That this band, when it gets up here, they're not here to usher in the Spirit of God. They're not here to entertain. They're not here to provide music for a service. They're not here, you know what? It's got to encompass the entire purpose of that band. It can't be little elective specific areas that each individual gravitates toward. When I asked John what the purpose of the band is here, he needs to have a unified response that every single person on that stage would give. That they know their purpose. They know where they're going. Where one person doesn't go, man, we just want these kids to have such a good time, that they'll be focused and be attentive and listen to the preaching of the Word and then give their lives to Jesus. And the other person say, we're here to usher in the Holy Spirit so that the Holy Spirit has an atmosphere that He can work in in this service. And somebody else will say, we're here to teach them how to praise and how to worship God. All those things are a part of the band, yet all those things individually aren't the purpose of the band. And see, and what John's got to do through the direction on that flow chart is to determine the specific purpose of his duty. And that's exactly what you've got to do. You know, if you're in here and you're volunteering for every single need that we have in the ministry, you know what? You don't have a purpose. This can't be any more like we're in a dark room with a sawed-off shotgun and we're just shooting. Man, I want us to be like those guns they use at night, which they got the bead on them. You know, that little red bead, where people know exactly when they're about to get cooked, because that little red bead like shows up right here. It's like, uh-oh. That's how definite our purpose has to be. The second thing, we have to pray about this task. And you know what this brings? And it's what we have to have, and it's what you have to write down. After number 2, where it says pray for this task, you have to write down zeal and passion. If your purpose and your task is a bummer, there isn't going to be a dadgum person worth his weight in apple butter want to get involved with you. But if you can prayerfully be encouraged about what you're doing, and you can have a zeal and a passion about it, you know what? And we're going to get into this in a few minutes, but you're going to have people lining up to get involved with your area. The third thing is, you have to set to work and underline that last word. It's got to be immediately. No more wondering, well, shoot. I'm going to pick on John a little more this morning. Well, I sure hope somebody brings some new music in here. Man, those 4.5 songs that we know, boy, it's getting old doing those every week. Man, and I better go listen to my radio. No, you know what? He's got to be about the work of his task, and he's got to start it right now. And it's got to flow within the vision of the ministry. And you know, the band right now has 20 songs that they know. That he sets a goal, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But the fourth thing is that you have to follow your plan. And then you have to refer to number 1. So put an arrow up to number 1 from 4. You have to refer to number 1. That you have to have a plan. You know, all you guys, any of you guys ever been sold life insurance? There's a saying those guys use. It's like, hey, you don't plan to fail, you fail to plan. It's like, yeah, right. And you plan a commission. But you know what? There's some truth and validity to that. Nobody in here wants to fail. Does anybody? Because if you want to fail, there's probably right at 600 other churches that I'd love to give you a ride to go and help, because we don't need that kind of an attitude. And they don't either. But you know what? You've got to have a plan. And it's got to be simple. It's got to be simple enough for the kids who come in here to get involved in it. Plus, you don't have to have this flowery dissertation on your plan or that kind of pressure to have that. It's got to be simple. All it has to be is complete sentences. And you've got a plan. And you've got to follow it. Number 5, you have to evaluate the plan. So often, Sandy and I have been involved in Christian schools, and I coached in Christian schools for 6 years. And the biggest thing that I saw in Christian schools that bugged the living tar out of me is that they'd have a policy in place. They'd get 2 negative phone calls about that policy, and they would change the policy because they got those negative phone calls. And it's like, we're changing policy because we can't be, what? And it's because there's so much going on, and it just drove me up a wall when that would happen. And the key for us evaluating our plan is that we don't make changes due to minor setbacks, but we only change something when it's defeated. And if you think about the changes that we've made in your area, or that you've made in your area, and why you made them. Barry's got 50 different opinions about the lighting. Craig's got 550 different opinions about the television production. But you know something? None of those matter except for what God's put in your heart pertaining your plan. Negative comments don't mean defeat. Negative opinions don't. Minor setbacks don't. I mean, if something is fruitless, yeah, we need to change it. But if something just isn't bearing the kind of fruit that we want to see, rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater in that plan, you need to evaluate that plan and make sufficient changes to make it effective. And not worry about everybody's little opinion, even mine. It's got to stay within the purpose of the ministry. And that definitely doesn't go, I mean, I have an opinion about things, but that opinion isn't always a directive. And there's a lot of discussions that happen, and what we've got to do is we don't have to so much be concerned about Drew and the buzz in the sound system. He knows there's a buzz. We've got to be concerned about our areas. We've got to make our areas as effective as we can. And count on the leadership of the ministry and Drew to take care of his buzz. And see, and that's why on that flow chart, there's somebody directly above you in a bold box who you're accountable to. And that's the leadership that speaks into your area. It doesn't go laterally. It doesn't go diagonally. And that keeps any confusion from happening. Number six, we need to bring in common allies. Now, there are people right now that you have plugged into your area. You have to make sure they're common allies. There might be a guy who is a tremendous musician, yet he's not a common ally. There might be a guy who's a wonderful, inventive, creative, thorough sound guy, but he's not a common ally. You have to bring in people who are common allies to your area. And those guys whose aid you need. Man, if you come to the place and where Janelle's got 53 people answering the telephones through the week, I don't know that she needs any more people to answer the telephones. So we don't have to have this sap mentality where it's like, man, can I come in and answer the phones? It's like, we'll keep your name on a list, but we really don't need someone to answer phones right now. And there are a bunch of other areas that you could get plugged into. What else would you like to do? See, because there's a lot of that where some areas are heavier than other areas. And that's what's going to happen too. And that's why we have to flow together. And that's why above you on that flow chart, there's also other boxes under that same bold box that you could plug people into by using the person who's in that bold box above you. Number 7, don't let a day pass without devoting some time to furthering your plan. This to me is huge. Everybody write huge right there somewhere. This is huge, and I'll tell you why. Your plan has to become a habit. And in order for it to become a habit, you have to devote daily attention to it. Daily attention. Underline that word daily. Day. Every day you have to give it some attention. Do you have to come to the building? No. Do you have to have a meeting about it? No. Every day you have to give your plan and your area and your task attention every day. And right in there, creating a habit, or to become a habit. And I think that's vital. And number 8, circle it. What does number 8 say? You've got to be enthused about your task. You've got to be, and you know something? And I'll tell you this. If you're not, you've got to really, really, really consider your place there. Because I'll tell you this right now, as the pastor of this church, I have got to have people who are enthused about what they're doing. If it's a bummer, you will reflect that. Even if, you know, in some of these areas are high-profile areas where you get a lot of attention and a lot of accolade, but you know what? It's just not, you're not enthused about it. But we've got to be enthused. Be enthused. Period. You're driving to church here. I'm not asking you to put on a facade. I'm asking you to allow Jesus to captivate your thoughts. If something's bugging you, if something's weighing heavy on you, and you're coming here for church, for a meeting, for a counseling session, for whatever it is, you purpose in your heart that you're going to eradicate anything from your heart that prohibits you from being enthused. But you've got to be enthused. B, where are we going? This is why we are meeting here this morning. Where the heck are we going? Now's when you guys have to start thinking. Now's when the things on the inside of you have to start stirring. Now I can't just read these notes and you read along with me and you write what I tell you to write down and you write your little notes down and you doodle. You fill in all the O's and then all the E's and then you fill in all the A's. Now's when you got to start thinking. Now's when the rubber's got to hit the road for us. Right now. Where are we going? We have to find, number 1, definiteness of purpose. Definiteness of purpose. Specifically, definiteness of purpose. This develops self-reliance, personal initiative, imagination, enthusiasm, self-discipline, and a concentrated effort. I'm going to go through this one more time for you guys that are writing them down, which should be everybody. Definiteness of purpose develops self-reliance, personal initiative, imagination, enthusiasm, self-discipline, and a concentrated effort. If we have those 6 things right there, we become nuclear. Those 6 things right there, we have no restraint. And I'm not saying if I become that, or if me and Sandy, or if me and Craig and Scott, or if me and Sandy and Susan, or me and, no, I'm saying if every member of this body right here in this task force gets a strong definiteness of purpose, it's unbelievable what happens. Number 2, definiteness of purpose brings specialization. We have got to be specialized. We have to be. Because that specialization brings greater performance. You have to become an expert in your task. Next January, I don't want to have a task force meeting and be going through this stuff again. Next January, I want to have a conference. Next January, I want you to be able to have one of these folders with guts stamped on the outside of it and your task stamped with it, and you be sitting with this many people from all over the country, or more than this many people, who have a heart for the task that you're about in their church. Okay, if you're bored right now, you need to go and get a donut and go play with the kids down at Hands On, or go home and go back to bed. Because this is where this ministry's going. And you've got to be specialized in your area. And if you're sitting here right now going, man, I don't know where I fit, that's fine. It really is. But if you're sitting here right now saying, I don't know if I want to know where I fit, or I'll never fit, or whatever, you know, your flesh is gonna rise up. It's going to. But you know what? The call and the voice of the Father that's in your heart has to your flesh has to succumb to that and has to be under. But we need great performance out of every area. Number 3, definiteness of purpose brings alertness to opportunity. It's not God's will for us to pay retail for everything. It's not God's will for us to have to hire a staff person per 100 people, which is what the traditional book says for the church. That's not God's will. It's God's will for us to be alert to opportunity. Everything that I hear at these pastors' conferences and these ministers' things that I've gone to is amazing. Everybody's downsizing their staff. Everybody. Everybody's talking about how their staff is half the size it was 3 years ago, and their church is 3 times as big as it was 3 years ago. See, the book used to say, you've got to hire more people to be able to grow, to be able to accommodate growth. And that used to bug me because I'm thinking, okay, so how do we do that? And now, I'm thinking, well, I don't have a peace about that. I don't want people to be hirelings. I don't want John to be a hireling. I don't want Rick to be a hireling. The Bible talks about hireling. Hireling's not a good title. You don't want to be a hireling. There are things that you have to hire people for. But you know what? Just because you're not employed here doesn't mean you're not on staff here. And just because you're not employed here doesn't mean your focus that's required of you is any less than someone who is. You didn't hire me. You can't fire me. See? I want to run this ministry, and I've been talking to Sandy about this, and she's in total agreement, to where this group gets so so strong and everybody's so specialized and the expertise is so incredible, there could be a U-Haul parked at that door Monday morning with me putting all my stuff in it, and you guys like cry because you're going to miss me and shake my hand and say see ya, but the ministry never skips a beat. Ever. Let me tell you something. You leave, I'm not skipping a beat. I'm pressing on. And that's the same attitude we have to have corporately. We've got to be about it, and that's what happens when we get specialized. That's what happens when we're alert to opportunity. Number 4, successful people can make decisions. Successful people can make decisions. Unsuccessful people can't. We have to be a people that are decisive. If you want to have any kind of success in any area of your life, you have to be able to make a decision. The Bible says a double-minded man is unstable, but not just unstable in the area he's double-minded in. A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. You know that? If you're double-minded in any area of your life, it affects every area of your life, whether you like it or not. And those are God's rules, not mine. That's the way we are made. And there's a reason for that. God's called us to make decisions. My dad's told me this ever since I was young enough to remember and understand it. He said, when you make a decision, you close the door and move on. We can't be a people that make a decision and we pull the door to. And we're like, oh, let me check that one more time. Man, I hope I... No, make the decision. And let me go another step further. It's better to make the wrong decision than to make no decision. That doesn't give you any kind of license, and you'll get your chops busted if you start making wrong decisions. But you know what? No decision gets us stuck in the mud. Doggone it, be decisive. This ministry can't run anymore with me having 500 things on my mind. I don't want to give a single dadgum thought to your area. Not one. I want to forget what your name is, you're so effective. I'm telling you right now. Because we're stuck in the mud right now. We've got growth, we've got excitement, people are pumped, people are giving their lives to the Lord. I couldn't go out to eat and have coffee last night without people coming to my table telling me when they got saved here at Guts. It's like, it got to the point where it's like, so what? I'm eating. But you know, we have got to be a people that can make decisions. Unsuccessful people are slow about decisions and change their decisions. Write that down. That cannot be you. Unsuccessful people are slow to make and change their decisions. This doesn't just apply to the ministry. You've got to be a people who live this. It's why people make so much money selling houses and selling cars. We're not a people who make decisions compulsively. But we can't be slow to make those decisions. 98% of the people, write that down, 98%. 98%. Let's round that. Everybody have no major purpose in life. None. %98 have no major purpose in life. Make a decision based on your definiteness of purpose and stick to it. Now. And I want you to write now down. I mean immediately. Number 5. You guys still here? Definiteness of purpose develops, and here has got to be the strongest attribute you have pertaining your task. Confidence. Definiteness of purpose develops confidence. And you know what that confidence links? Just put a little equal sign. Integrity and character. It attracts attention and inspires cooperation. You have got to be a part of the 2%. You have to be. You have to be a part of the 2% to sit here. You have to be a part of the 2% who have a major purpose in life. You inspire the 98%. They recognize you and want to assist you. Number 6. Definiteness of purpose then can and has to hook up into faith. Doubt, discouragement, indecision, procrastination, all that stuff becomes limited when your definiteness of purpose hooks up into your faith. What can't we do? Eliminate that thinking. I mean, eliminate it. We don't need to sit around and talk about or think about what we can't do. They're roadblocks, and we don't need them. Number 7. Refuse to accept failure. Refuse to. You have to be like an athlete at the end of the game who's a goal down or a few points down or a touchdown, and he didn't lose. They just ran out of time. We have to be like an athlete that says, there's a guy for the Chargers. Steelers and the Chargers played last week. Steelers are planning a rap video for their Super Bowl. They're 10-point favorites. They're playing at home. They passed out 60,000 yellow terrible towels. They've got guys mouthing everything. Their coach is guaranteeing victory. They've got all these people saying that the Chargers can't play with them. The Chargers' only star has a pinched nerve and can't feel anything in his arm, can't use his arm, and he plays middle linebacker. You hear all this stuff about the Steelers and all this stuff that's going on, and you hear nothing from the Chargers. Nothing. Not a word. Steelers dominate the game. Chargers quarterback's 1 for 7 for like 10 yards in the first half, and the Steelers are winning. Steelers are dominating. Except the Chargers had a purpose. The Chargers beat the Steelers in the last regular season game, but the Steelers sat all their stars, and that's why they beat them, they said. The Chargers ended up winning the playoff game last week. The Chargers are going to the Super Bowl, and a little defensive back for the Chargers said that wasn't a fluke. We had a purpose. While they were mouthing, we were letting that purpose grow on the inside of us. That wasn't a fluke. We will play them anywhere, anytime, and beat their brains out. And he walked out of the media room and into the bus. And that's how we have to be. We don't have to be running around telling people how direct we are, how confident we are, how specialized we are. We just have to refuse to accept failure, and it's got to be in here. We have to become success conscious. And you know what we have to be? We got to be sold on it. We got to close that deal right now in our hearts. A lot of people can be salesmen, but there's few people who can close that sell in that deal. And we've got to be the kind of people right now in your heart, because some of you guys have failed. Some of you guys have broken relationships. Some of you guys have divorces. Some of you guys have been fired from every job you've had. Some of you guys have never been good looking a day in your life. Some of you guys have never had a good hair day. Some of you guys, but let me tell you, none of that stuff matters. You got to close that deal in your heart right now. I mean, slam it shut. You are successful. You are not a failure. You do not ever, and write that down, right? I never fail. There's areas we haven't won yet. But that's good. Because we're in the fight. You never fail. C, we need a strong nucleus, and I believe we have it. Number one, our success is a result of God's call. Understanding His Word, understanding His faith, and understanding His attitude, and becoming like His Word, His faith, and His attitude. Having God's attitude. Number two, we must be clear about what we give before we can expect to get where we are going. Where the heck are you going? Where are you going with your task, with what your purpose is? Where are you going? We must be clear about what we have to give before we can get there. Number three, everything pertaining to your task that you come across has to be compiled in concise, organized notes. You've got to become writers. You got to get this stuff out of your head. I am out of control guilty of this. You've got to get the plans you have, your procedures, the thoughts you have about your task, what bugs you about all of that stuff. You have got everything. Circle that word everything. The first word there, number three. You have to compile in concise, organized notes. Here's why. I have an ulterior motive. One, it gets it out of your head and onto paper. Two, this enables this vision to be passed on and then enlarged and expanded. D, the only way this happens, reaching our objective, is through extraordinary effort. Most are not willing to make it. It'll take dedication. Some will. Few will. Most won't. And that's how you have to look at it. The people that you bring into your alliance have to be a people of extraordinary effort. And you have to remember, most people won't. Opportunity. There is. People don't think there's opportunity. Let me tell you something. It's been proven that this exists. Anyone who says otherwise is only using it as an alibi. They're unwilling and they can't use imagination. Under that opportunity part, you have to write down, I have to have imagination. You've got to have imagination in your area. You have to have it. IBM became a huge company by producing very high quality machines to run business offices big and small. Have you guys heard of IBM? Then turned its attention to making big, powerful computers. Profits plummeted. IBM decided, you know where the money is? Man, we're going to corner the market on these huge, powerful computers. We're going to make it happen. We are going to control that market. Profits plummeted. Layoffs happened. It had to remake itself. IBM had to go from the very core and remake the entire corporation and rebuild it because their customers wanted small personal computers that they could provide to all of their employees. Dozens of smaller companies stepped in and were established and made fortunes. I could care less about making a fortune monetarily. I do care about making a fortune in souls. The traditional church somehow has evolved into a big, cold structure in people's minds. Outside of it. They want to have the biggest, best buildings. But we've found that there's a segment of people, and they're reaching people, but we've also found there's a segment of people that want that little personal computer, that don't care about that big, huge monster computer to run the government. They want a computer that they can run their life with. They can budget their life, and they can put their plans on it, and they can write memos and letters on it. And I believe that's where the gospel is here. See, we're one of those companies that came out of nowhere providing personal computers. It's like a little hole in the wall. And you know, the parallel is incredible to me. I mean, you go to some of these companies, their executives are relaxed. They have earrings and ponytails. They wear loafers to work. Where the IBM guys have the starched white shirts and the red ties and the gray suits. See, we can't lose touch with what our clientele needs. And that's where we have to find opportunity. Number 2, forming an alliance. We have to consider like a train crew. This is the next page. The conductor can take the train to its destination only because all the crew recognize and respect his authority. Any breakdown causes the passengers to find alternate ways to get there, or an accident or crash will occur. And that's a real easy parallel that we can draw. Number 1, we have to know where we are going and let people know. Number 2, we have to choose an alliance. And that's this, task force. Each of your personnel. And in choosing an alliance, we have to they have to have ability to do the job. B, ability to work in harmony with others. B, the ability to work in harmony with others. B, the ability to work in harmony with others. No discord. Write that down. Period. Discord is like poop. Personal ambitions are subordinate to the fulfillment of the definite purpose of the ministry. Personal ambitions are subordinate to the fulfillment of Definite purpose of the ministry. This includes moi. C, 4 areas that are essential. Number 1, confidence. Number 2, understanding. Number 3, justice. Number 4, courage. And the big one there that I have to work on is number 3, justice. Everyone in this room, and you guys listen carefully, from the top of that flow chart to the bottom is going to become accountable. If something's required of you, and you acknowledge that you're going to do it and it doesn't get done, you're going to be held accountable. From the top of that flow chart to the bottom. Period. And I believe there, a confidence, and I think that number 3 brings the other 3 of those items there, brings them to the surface. But under 4, courage, the greater the alliance, the greater the resistance that can be overcome. And the scripture reference there is 1 can put 1,000 to flight, and 2 doesn't put 2,000, it puts 10,000. God's principle there is multiplied, not added. So you have to know that the greater the alliance, the greater the resistance that can be overcome. There is a resistance out there. And I believe we have what it takes to overcome it. Number 3, everybody take a deep breath. An alliance in your home. Speak daily of what you want to achieve and how in your home. To your wife, to your husband, to your roommate. In your home, especially spouses. Speak daily of what you want to achieve and how. It's like on this one here, you might as well paint a target on my forehead. But I am committed and I am devoted to communicating to Sandy daily of what is to be achieved and how that's to be achieved. And I'm requiring that of her too. To rely on your definitive of purpose, and the benefits will be obvious to your spouse. Harmony here is essential. The marriage union creates a whole. The vision needs to be clear and agreeable. Your whole family can and should be incorporated into your purpose. This isn't just husbands. Because wives in this room have a purpose in this ministry. And it goes both ways. But you've got to work as one, as a whole. Your whole family can and should be incorporated into this plan. Daily. Devote daily time to what God's called you to do here. And finally, alliance with God's Word, and His Spirit is supreme in this alliance. So you know something? Get ready to write. Right under alliance with God's Word. It has to be studied. S-T-U-D-I-E-D. I didn't want to say there that you have to study it. I'm saying it has to be studied. It has to become past tense in your life all the time in a present day form. God's Word has to be studied. Now listen, not just read. You have to meditate on God's Word. You have to consume it in your life and create an alliance with it. Number 3, turn the page. No, you don't have to turn the page. I do. Number 3, the obvious. A, understand God's plan for man. In a nutshell, He created man in His image. Man fell. He provided a Savior in His Son Jesus. And by receiving Jesus into your heart, you come full circle back into right standing with God in His image. That's God's plan for man. B, overcoming doubt and unbelief. Make a conscious effort every day. Do you understand how daily fits into this task force? Every day you make a conscious effort to eradicate, to defeat, to crush, to pummel, to obliviate doubt and unbelief. Don't let it be a part of you. C, overcome fear. Fear of poverty because you're in the ministry. And how are you going to be able to live? And where will you eat? And who will dress you? And who's going to tie your shoes? And where will it come? And I'd like to tell you I got this whole fear of poverty thing figured out. I mean, we take offerings that people can't get to the buckets to give. Yet God continues to supply. People can't get the buckets because people are up here dancing. Not just dancing, it's like they're throwing like cross body blocks on people trying to get to the buckets. But we have to overcome fear in our lives. What do you have fear about? Poverty. Here's a huge one. Criticism. Do you have fear about somebody criticizing your work? Do you have fear about your health? Do you have fear about death? Do you have fear about people appreciating or liking you? You know what? Get rid of that fear. Don't play that fear thing. Overcome it. You can't just ignore it. You have to overcome it. D, instill hope. E, demonstration of God's power applied in faith. Not just having faith, but using it. Write that down. Not just having faith, but using it. Faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. Demonstration of God's power applied in faith. Faith without works is dead. And number 4, and this is huge, you have to go the extra mile. How far is reasonable? A mile is. You have to decide in your task what's reasonable. What's your reasonable service in your task? What's reasonable, and then double it. What's reasonable, and then go the extra mile. Find out what's reasonable and then double it. Now we're going to take a little break, and I'm right on time, and I don't want you two to point at your watch another time. Yeah, both of us. Give the Lord a hand, will you? Okay, go get a donut and a cup of coffee, and hurry up.
I saw you speed up. You did a great job.
Hey, Shelly, just go get a dadgum donut.
Good luck.
We're going to be back at 10:30.
Hey, you've got 3 minutes to get a cup of coffee. Run like the wind. a lot for like if they want like clouds to be moving and sky and stuff. It doesn't have to be real. Yeah. And if any more discussion needs to happen on the team building exercises, but we need to move on. Do you guys have a copy of your task force questions? Okay, it's important. Listen, do not start reading them ahead of the group. Do not start reading them ahead of the group. Okay? These questions, I want you to take one of the pages, the notebook pages in your folder, and answer these as I ask them. Some of these will take a you. Some of you guys, I mean, if you're sitting by, your husband or wife, these might be difficult questions to answer because they might be a part of some of the answers. But so I don't think that this should be for anybody else but you. Okay, so don't be looking at other people's pages. Discipline yourself and pay attention to your own self. And, I think that gets to be a problem when we start trying to answer other people's challenges and questions and not taking care of our own deal. This is taking care of our own deal now, and I think these questions are really going to broaden you. Number one, so turn away from your questions. Go to your notebook page. You don't need to see them. Number one, what is your greatest strength in the ministry? What is your greatest strength? And don't just say soul winning. Don't just say, like I couldn't say pastoring. I mean, what is the greatest, specifically, the greatest, don't try to be like super spiritual and try to spiritualize it and try to make it put it in a Christian jargon. Just answer the question, what is your greatest strength? After you answer it, write down this second question for number one. How can it be maximized? This is not question two. This is just part two of question one. How can it be maximized? How can your strength become stronger? And you don't have to answer that one, no. Number two, what three decisions cause you the greatest stress? What three decisions in your life cause you the greatest stress? What three decisions cause your greatest stress? No, just in your life. In your life. Just in you. What three decisions cause you the greatest stress? Yeah. Two main causes of stress. Write these two things down as a sidebar. The two main causes of stress. Indecision and lack of control. Uncontrol and indecision. Those are the two main causes of stress. The question was, what three decisions cause your greatest stress? I'm sorry? Indecision and lack of control. Number three, what is overwhelming you? What in your life overwhelms you? It may be, I'm not even going to qualify it. What in your life overwhelms you? What in your life overwhelms you? What is overwhelming you? Number 4. What impossible roadblock has you stuck? What impossible roadblock has you stuck? And you can't, and you know, these questions are hard to answer, but you can't just think, I'm not stuck. I don't have any roadblocks. You might have to think about it. And you might be sitting next to your husband, and on there you might have to put, my husband, his attitude. What impossible roadblock has you stuck? Write it down. Make an attempt. Number 5. What 3 things do you want to attain in your life? And better put, if you could, what 3 things would you do in your lifetime if you could do 3 things? If you could do 3 things in your lifetime, and that's it, what would they be? What 3 things do you want to attain in your lifetime? What 3 things would you do in your lifetime if you could only do 3 things? And I think it's good not to spiritualize this too much too. I mean, there are like established world peace, win every person, every Chinese man, woman, and child to Jesus. I mean, I think it's important for you, what comes up in your heart. When I ask you what 3 things, there's bang, bang, bang. What are those things? The 3 things you'd like to do in your lifetime. And those things change. If you'd asked me 3 years ago, I'm doing one of them. I'm doing 3 of them, as a matter of fact. But, okay. Number 6. What on your to-do list can someone else do 80% as well as you? What's on your to-do list can someone else do? %. And the premise here is there are over 3 million Mormons. You know that? Over 3 million Mormons. The Mormon church has 12 employees. 12 full-time employees. And there are over 3 million Mormons. Those 12 guys aren't doing everything. Number 7. You're Noah. You've built the ark. You got a pair of animals per ark, or on the ark. You got a pair of animals of each kind. And that ark's taking water on. You got to find your elephants. You start taking monkeys and squirrels and hummingbirds and pitching them over the side, they're not going to make much of a difference. But we're talking about your life right now is that ark. You're taking water on, you got to identify your elephants. You get rid of a couple elephants, that's going to take the place of a bunch of water. So, what are your elephants? What in your life? And see, and the other thing as a part of this question is, everything in your life is an animal. With everything in your life, with those elephants aren't the precious, precious things in your life. They make a big mess. They take a lot of feed. And they're big and heavy. What are your elephants? That's number 7. What in your life, if you start taking water on, could you throw out and become buoyant again? Number 8. This is huge. This is a question and probably one of the main reasons why we're here this morning. What are 3 things that you can do that'll make a 50% difference in the ministry in the next 90 days? You know, so many people have a 5-year plan, or a 3-year plan, or a 1-year plan. And you know, in this ministry, we need to have those, and those are very important. But I think more importantly right now, we need to have 90-day plans. What 3 things, and list them, what 3 things could you do to appropriate a 50% difference in this ministry? 50% in the next 90 days. What are the 3 things you can do to make a 50% difference in the next 90 days? Next 3 months. By the end of April. This is going to be a question I want you to put. You can write down the answer now, but I'd like the answer to this next question. And probably I'd like the answer to questions 8 and 9 with your name on them. Just for me. But number 9, what are our keys to growth? What are the keys to growth in Guts? What are our keys to growth? Not your keys, not my keys. What are our keys to growth? That we're doing right now. Because we're growing, and there's got to be keys to that growth. And you know, so many times, like if people come in here and go, man, what can you attribute to all these people here on Sunday night? We could say, oh, it's just Jesus. And it's just God just attracting people in. And you know what? That's true. But you know what? There are things that we do that the product of that is growth. What are those keys to growth that we do, in your opinion? And the second part of that question is, what else could we be doing? Which goes probably hand in glove, part of it, with question number 8. So the question number 9, the first part is, what are our keys to growth? And the second part is, what are keys we're missing? What are other things we could do? Number 10. What is your passion? And I want the answer to this question too. What is your passion? If you say, watching football, you've got to reevaluate your life probably. But number 10 is, what is your passion? What are you deeply moved by? What floats your boat? Because there better be people in here who cover 3 areas. To evangelize, to disciple, and to develop. Now your passion, I don't want you to put, oh yeah, my passion's to develop. No, what's your passion specifically? And you ought to be able to answer that question just by having it asked to you and you write it down. These were 10 questions that we put in this folder for you to refer to every couple weeks. For you to refer to once a month. To make sure, A, that things aren't weighting you down because they're all in your heart and they're all in your head. So that you can write them down, you get them on paper, you get them out of your head. You got them on paper and you can deal with them. That you've had to put in concrete form what stresses you out and where your roadblock is. Because if you've got a roadblock and you've got that same roadblock in a month, you've got to go to somebody and get around or get over or get through that roadblock. If you're going to be in the place in this ministry and in your life with the Lord that you aspire to be, you can't have roadblocks. None. You can't have things that overwhelm you. And you know what? We live in the world, so there are going to be overwhelming things that come before us. There are going to be roadblocks that we encounter. But you know what? We've got to defeat those things. We've got to be the overcomer. You know, and if I'd asked you this question a year ago, what overwhelms you? And you just said, man, my debt. Man, I'm in debt and I can't see the light of day. And then we'd ask you now again and say, what overwhelms you? And you'd say, my debt. See, you don't need those patterns in your life, and we've got to break those things to be able to remove the limits that are on this ministry. What's your passion? That's got to be identified. And then we've got to go back up to number 1, which goes hand in glove with number 10, which goes hand in glove with all the other questions we have. They all work together. In your notes, can you write down 3 principles for leaders? 3 principles for leaders. A, build a team. You have got to have a team. You cannot be the Lone Ranger. B, schedule time away. You get to the point, I get to the point in my life, I was, I think, guilty of this in 1994. Because the ministry required so much of my attention that I was guilty of not scheduling enough time away. And the point there is, you're involved, you're in, and you can't see the forest from the trees. You've got to remove yourself and then look at it from a distance. Get out from under it, so to speak. You've got to schedule time away. If it's just to go for a drive one night a week at 10 o'clock where you drive to Leonard and back, and it takes you an hour, you've got to schedule time away. And you know, that goes with just leadership. And C, and this is imperative. And I'm about to do something we've never done before that's needed. That'll go with letter C. C, you have to model a balanced life. And a part of that balanced life is you don't smoke. You don't drink. You're not involved in partying. You have no sex outside that of your spouse. If you're single, you have no sex life. Period. End of subject. None. We've got to model a balanced life. You've got to require this of your team. Now, without building a relationship, for you to go in and say, okay, you're running sound and you smoke, so you're not going to run, you're out. No smoking. No, you got to build a relationship, and what's got to come is from their relationship with Jesus that stops. See, and I'm in no wise saying smoking and drinking and partying is, I'm not saying I'm not putting that as like, those are sins and we got to be away from, but you know, to me, it's not modeling a balanced life with Jesus. You know, and we've got to model a balanced life. We've got to, I mean, if you're here and you're constantly got the weight of the world on you and in a bad mood and pressured, you're not modeling a balanced life. And a part of that balanced life, and please listen to me, we have to eradicate rebellion. And you know what? We have seeds of rebellion throughout that we have got to weed this field. And it's got to start with our own life. And that rebellion is very subtle. I never run across rebellion in the form of somebody saying, well, Bill told me to do this, but I'm not doing it. I got a better way. He might be the pastor. He isn't God. I'm not doing it. That's non-existent. What does exist is, hey, you know what? We need to change this. And the response to that is, why? How come? Well, see, and what happens is areas of the ministry become territorial to you. And we've got to be so careful. I'll tell you what, there are too many areas, too much to coordinate for us to have any kind of rebellion. And that's not to say for me to come in and say, hey, I'm going to run sound tonight, Drew. His flesh is going to rise up and say, why? But see, it can't come from an attitude of rebellion. That can't be communicated at all. And that's not to say for him to say, okay, sure. Man, am I like falling short? I mean, you're allowed to have that. But see, what I've come across over the course of the ministry is, well, why? Well, what do you mean? Whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean, change? Wait a minute. You thinking this through? See, that's rebellion. And the Bible says rebellion is the sin of witchcraft. And you know why that is? That's not just taken out. That's not just some example of the occult or something that was pulled out of the air. It's because witchcraft is control. And rebellion is control. Witchcraft and rebellion come from a controlling spirit. A controlling, and then that becomes an attitude. And you know what? There's no place for that. In any shape or form. That's why things have to be communicated at home. That you guys that are married, you've got to have an alliance in your home where there's communication open, where there's no question. And we never put anybody in a position to rebel against the godly authority that God's set in this ministry. And you know, the way this ministry is designed is we want to get people plugged in. We want to get people involved. That involvement doesn't give you a say. That involvement gives you an opportunity to serve. And that's something that for another meeting. But you really have to critique and judge and evaluate your heart. And what decisions have been made affecting you in this ministry in the past or lately where that rebellion's risen up in you. And you know what? When you free your heart of that, it's going to be a lot better on you leading and managing people in your area to take care of that in their life. You know, I mean, there aren't many things that come from, that are religious here. There aren't many things that are political here. That's not to say there's none. But you know, this thing here that we went through this morning, I'm taking myself through it. You're going to have to go back through here and slowly and surely take care of these things in your life. And I think this is going to set us on a launching pad to take the gospel to the masses. To take it to every nook and cranny, every corner, to not exclude anybody to the message of hope. The questions, you know, I'd like to have, I think, questions 8, 9, and 10 from you, and you can just bring them to church tomorrow with your name on it. Questions 8, 9, and 10. You know, and I'm not looking for you to bear your innermost thoughts and soul to me. And I want to know where you're at. I want to know what your strength is even. And I think that passion is going to reflect that strength. I'd like you guys to keep these and use these for your notes. I'd like you to develop a file on your area. I'd like you to document and journal and chart what you've gone through, decisions that went into your area. Personnel strengths and weaknesses, areas of your life that are weak, that prohibit the area in the church to be as strong as it could be, so that maybe we can fill those gaps and plug that in. For us to develop a paper trail between my office and your area, so that we're abreast and on top of everything needs you may have. Because we're gonna start. As of right now, there's going to be a lot more control on money. A lot more control on decisions in those areas. Because up to this point, I mean, I need mop heads, and I need lights, and I need puppets, and I need toys, and I need paint, and I need lumber, and I need a car, and I need a bus, and we need a new door, and we need an alarm system, and you know what? Yeah. I don't think we have wasted anything up to this point. But we've got to have a system to be able to chart it and to be able to release those funds so that there is an order to it. And we're not foolish with what God's given us. Are there any comments or questions that you guys have about this morning that came up that I could answer, or that can be dealt with? Because there's just a couple other things that I have before we close. Are there any other comments that you may have? Questions that you may have? I think it was a good morning. I'd like for you guys tomorrow night to be here at 6 o'clock or before. Some of you guys have to be here earlier because of what you do in the service. But I'd like for you guys to be at prayer on Sunday nights. I'd like for you guys to be here at least by 6 o'clock on Sunday nights, and 6:30 on Wednesday nights. And Wednesday nights is more for you to be available to people, to minister and to just build relationships with people. Maybe pull people into your area. This Sunday night, though, I'm going to recognize you to the church. And just recognize you in the area that you're a part of, so that people can put a face to a name, to an area, to that, and then give people an opportunity to plug in. John may be flooded with 50 keyboard players or something. But I'm gonna do that tomorrow. Plus, I've got job descriptions for you. Somewhere for you guys that have definite areas. What I'd like you to do with these job descriptions, I'd like you to take them home. I'd like you to read them prayerfully, consider them, write on them, mark them up, put your comments, concerns, corrections, things that may help your area, and then turn them back in to the office in the next week or so. Let's do this by next weekend. John. And then we'll return those with a copy for your folder. Can you make a copy of this for Jamie too? I don't know if this is yours or Ivan's. Okay. Okay. Any closing comments? Susan? Did everybody hear that? Everybody look at Susan and say, okay, I will. Any other comments, Scott?
You might address your vision for water baptism. And I know that that's been an area that's been evolving as far as how you want it to work with the service.
Yeah, and I think what I think I need to address and what Scott's bringing up is you guys being a part of that. Not being back there hanging out, talking, making sure, you're picking your table at Fridays or Chili's or wherever you're going, and making sure that when the baptism service is a part of the service, and it's not. And when a couple of weeks ago I was a little under the weather, and Scott took over the baptisms. It was ridiculous. I mean, I was appalled. We did them right here, and we couldn't get people to calm down. Many of you were a part of that. And just be quiet and just not grieve the Spirit of God, because I'll tell you, it's an anointed part of the service. We do it once a month. It takes 10 minutes, at the most 15 minutes, and I think that the music starts. We're going to do offerings a little differently too, so that it's not just going to be a flow of people that you can't control after the offering. We're going to pass a bucket, just because we can't get to the stage now, and I think that'll keep a little more control in that area. But make sure that if you're in a group of people that are talking and visiting and having a great time, and somebody, myself or Sandy or Scott or Craig, says, hey, hold it, calm down, we got one more thing we need to do, that you don't just ignore it and finish your point. And that, I think, is that what you were talking about? I think that is pretty clear. Are there any other?
I think that would be easier just to release them like those people and ask them a little bit early before you dismiss the service and do it right.
No, I think we can be disciplined enough to sit down for an extra 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And and my concern isn't visitors and guests. My concern's us. And the night Scott was doing it, it was this group that I saw. You know, and then other regular people. Right. Right. That's the way, you know, when I thought about that, Daryl asked if baptism had to be tacked on at the end. Really, that's what is the most effective way to do it, because then you get spontaneous people just kicking their boots off and getting in the water, you know, and we want that, to encourage that. If we did it at the beginning of the service, people wouldn't do that. We'd end up having 2 baptism services, one in the service and one at the end for people that it's a spontaneous thing. Plus, we wanted people that give their life to the Lord that night to be able to have that opportunity. So, but the other thing is, and we have, I'm starting to encounter this, and really me, we've got to be careful about distractions. And what we've got to be careful about is the banter back and forth in the service. You know, and you know, where we feel free to make comments about what's going on in the service. And you know, I don't know what the impression you guys have, but there are Sunday nights that this isn't like a piece of cake to get up here and speak. You know, and if you've got banter, you know, it's a little more difficult, and a lot more difficult. And what you have to realize is there is, I mean, the devil's trying to find ploys and people he can use as tools to distract what the Holy Spirit wants to do in these services. And please don't ever put yourself in a position to be a tool. You know, and you know, because we build a relationship where it's like you know, we may have a relationship where we're friendly, and you know, and we know each other, and we get in a service and we get into that place where we feel like we're that comfortable. Then we got little Joe Blow sitting there that thinks he can too, you know, and then a Gothic kid sitting in the back thinks they can too, and then it's like it gets very difficult, you know, because we've got people in here that are limited mentally, you know, that we can be great examples for. I mean, honestly, we got guys in here that if they see people dancing, they'll dance. If they see people attentive, they'll be attentive. They see people carrying their Bibles in and reading them, they'll do it. You know, and if they see people, you know, bringing attention to themselves, they will. They'll want to. And you know, it doesn't take but 3 or 4 or 5 of that kind of thing to just disrupt an entire deal. And that probably goes in the same line as being attentive to the ministry until it's over. Any other comments? Any other things in the ministry that have been brought to your attention that need to be handled or need to come up? Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to start doing it where, you know, I don't know, the big kids probably ought to see that. You know, and maybe we can have an usher or somebody go tell Rick or whoever's at the door there in the children's church that baptisms are starting, that when he's done he can orderly bring his kids out to see them. I don't know. Wow. 32-inch TV. Let's leave the kids in the rooms now until we can get a system. Yeah.
So get the back start, people won't still hang up after that.
Yeah, I think lighting's a big key there. If we lose like somebody well, I think Ivan's taking care of that. But you know, Barry, maybe if we can just have a spot on that baptism tank and everything else is black. No, those lights stay on. I'm just saying, yeah, I'm just saying a spot on the dunk tank wherever it is. And I don't like that.
No.
No.
Where do you want it?
I don't like it in the middle.
As long as you stick it right behind.
Put it over there.
Quiet, please. Right. Oh, yeah.
That's what we're going to try to implement that professionally. Just so that everybody's taking it.
Uh-uh. Who?
Brett, he's real assertive about things like that. I mean, he's got the good enough to go through Chelsea way and move it.
Well,
I'm listening.
that probably falls under Ivan. Security. Yeah, somehow do that. Any other questions or comments? Just go up and slap them across the face and tell them to quit smoking in front of the door. Oh, yeah. Cut your knuckle on her lip ring. Any other comments? Just about the ministry, about your area, about conflicts, about things that need to be corrected, about...
I just want to encourage everybody not